Hello, and thank you for listening to this episode of the Moore's October Rants. Today's episode is going to be titled 2015 versus 2025. As I sit here in 2025, it's impossible not to reflect on the past decade and think about how much has changed, not just in the world, but in my own life. Every 10 years, it's natural to look back, assess what's happened, and measure the progress made. For me, the last 10 years have been a whirlwind of personal growth, societal shifts, and the inevitable ups and downs that come with it. And as I reflect, the AI I consulted had an interesting perspective on the difference between 2015 and 2025. It said, 2015 was the party. 2025 is the hangover. That hit me deep because it feels like that's exactly where we are. The excitement and chaos of the last decade have quieted, and now we're left with the aftermath. Looking back at 2015, I remember feeling energized, full of hope, and almost invincible as I navigated my early 20s. Life felt like an open road full of endless possibilities. But the past 10 years have seen a lot of change, both in society and within me. As a generation, it feels like we've shifted from that fast-paced, let's change the world mentality to one of exhaustion. Society has become more polarized, with people getting offended over smaller things, and social media seems to be a bigger part of our lives than ever before. We've entered what feels like the aftermath of a party where the fun has stopped, and now we're grappling with the consequences. I've spent a lot of time thinking about how much society's communication has changed. In 2015, while we were already immersed in social media, it felt like we were still figuring out what it all meant. The platforms were there. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat. But they hadn't reached the level of saturation we see today. Back then, social media felt simpler, and perhaps even more innocent. Fast forward to 2025, and everything has grown, but not always in ways that benefit us. It's become more complex, more divisive, and often more draining. Social media has infiltrated nearly every aspect of our lives, and it feels like we've lost the ability to communicate in meaningful ways. What was once a place to connect with friends has become a place of comparison and frustration. The more advanced technology becomes, the more complicated it gets, and not in a good way. Beyond the external world, I've also learned a lot about myself and the people around me over the past decade. I think back to when I was in my early 20s, and I had this idealized notion of what relationships should look like. Over the years, I've learned that no matter how much you care about someone, no matter how much you love them, there's no guarantee they'll want to be in your life. People love you the way they want to love you, not necessarily the way you need them to. And that's a hard truth to accept. But it's been essential to my growth. I've learned that no matter how much you put into a relationship, people can only meet you where they are in their own lives. They can't love you in a way that fits your needs unless they're capable of it. And speaking of relationships, expectations have been another area where I've grown. I've learned that when you set your expectations too high, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. You can expect people to respond to you in the way you think they should, whether it's with a simple text, a like on a post, or the same level of enthusiasm you have for them. But they won't always meet those expectations. And the truth is, people are going to disappoint you. That's not to say that they don't care or that they don't love you. It's just that everyone is operating from their own perspective, and it doesn't always align with yours. Over the past decade, I've learned to manage those expectations. And in doing so, I've been able to let go of a lot of frustration. It's not that people aren't important. It's that you can't force them to be what you need them to be. This lesson about relationships ties into a larger theme I've noticed over the past decade. The way social media has changed our expectations of everything. In 2015, the concept of living life online was still relatively new. Sure, people were posting photos, tweets, and statuses, but it wasn't as pervasive. By 2025, social media is an inseparable part of everyday life. The stakes have gotten higher. It's no longer just about sharing moments with friends. It's about constantly curating your identity, presenting a life that appears perfect, or at least aspirational. But with all this growth in technology, things haven't necessarily gotten better. Instead, they've become more complicated. There's more pressure, more scrutiny, and at times, more toxicity in online spaces. It's harder than ever to separate the real you from the persona you present on social media. And for all its advancement, social media feels more disconnected now than it did 10 years ago. Now, it's important to say that not all the changes over the past decade have been negative. Personally, I've experienced a shift in my own perspective. I've come to understand that progress doesn't always mean drastic change. In fact, some of the most important progress in my life has been internal, not external. For example, I've lived in the same area for the past decade, and while I haven't made a huge leap in terms of career or location, I've come to appreciate stability. There's value in consistency, and I've learned to embrace the comfort that comes with it. It's easy to get caught up in the narrative that success is defined by constant growth and upward mobility, but that's not always the case. Sometimes, contentment with where you are, especially in a world that feels constantly in flux, is an achievement in itself. In 2015, I was still figuring out what I wanted to do with my life. I didn't follow the traditional path that many of my peers did. I didn't go to college right away. Instead, I focused on surviving, making enough money to get by, figuring out what made me happy, and just getting through the day-to-day. Looking back, I don't regret that decision. It's a lesson I've learned over the years. Success isn't defined by the societal expectations placed on you. It's about living a life that feels authentic to you. If you're doing something you enjoy, then you're on the right path, regardless of what others might think or expect. Of course, life isn't always easy. The cost of living has gone up significantly over the past decade, and rent, in particular, has skyrocketed. In 2015, I was making enough to get by. But now, it feels like everything is more expensive, and I've had to be more creative with my finances. But I've also realized that survival isn't the same as thriving. It's okay to live within your means and focus on being content with what you have. That's been a major shift in my mindset over the years. You don't have to constantly push for more to prove your worth. One of the other big lessons I've learned is that arguing with people is rarely worth it. I've had plenty of online arguments in the past decade, especially on social media. But as time has passed, I've realized that these arguments rarely lead to anything productive. People already have their minds made up, especially when it comes to deeply held beliefs. So, even if you present a compelling case, you're unlikely to change their viewpoint. More often than not, these arguments are a waste of time, energy, and mental peace. I've come to understand that some battles aren't worth fighting. And the sooner you let go of that need to win every argument, the more peaceful your life will be. I've made a commitment to myself that in the next decade, I want to stop arguing for the sake of it. Of course, there will be moments where I slip up, because I'm only human. But I want to focus on having meaningful discussions rather than trying to prove someone wrong. Healthy debates are great when both sides are open to hearing each other. But if the goal is just to win or to make someone else feel bad, then it's not worth it. I've learned to pick my battles more carefully, especially as I've gotten older. It's not about avoiding conflict altogether. It's about choosing conflicts that are actually worth engaging in. Ultimately, as I look ahead to the next decade, I feel a sense of both resolution and anticipation. There's so much I want to accomplish, but more than that, I want to continue to learn. To grow not just professionally, but personally. To deepen my understanding of the world and the people around me. And perhaps most importantly, to find more peace with where I am. It's easy to get caught up in the idea that we should constantly be striving for more, but sometimes the most important thing is to be content with what you have. And that, I think, is a lesson worth carrying into the next decade. Anyways, thank you for listening to this episode of the Moore's October Rants. Signing out. Have a good one, guys. Goodbye for now.